1 year after Panipat, Babur should have been secure. He had defeated the Delhi Sultanate, captured Delhi, and proclaimed himself ruler of Hindustan. But India was not conquered. From the west, a new enemy was coming, not a collapsing sultan, not divided nobles, a warrior king, Rana Sanga of Mewar. A man feared across Rajputana, a ruler who had survived countless battles and lost an eye, an arm, and a leg fighting his enemies. Now he was marching toward Babur with a massive Rajput confederacy behind him. And for the first time since entering India, Babur was afraid. Rana Sangram Singh, known to history as Rana Sanga, was already becoming a legend before Babur entered India. He ruled the kingdom of Mewar from the great fortress of Chittor. Unlike many rulers of the age, Rana Sanga led from the front. Chroniclers described him as a warrior covered in scars. He had reportedly lost one eye in battle, one arm to a sword strike, and suffered wounds across his body from years of warfare. Yet every scar only strengthened his reputation. Rajput clans rallied around him. Kingdom after kingdom joined his growing confederacy. By the 1520s, Rana Sanga had become one of the most powerful rulers in northern India. Many believed he, not Babur, would become the true master of Hindustan. Babur's victory at Panipat had shocked India. In a single day, the Delhi Sultanate had collapsed. But conquest and control were not the same thing. Babur now ruled a land that did not truly accept him. Many Afghan nobles refused to submit. Local rulers watched him with suspicion. Rebellions began appearing almost immediately across northern India. Even Delhi itself felt unstable. The treasury was strained, supply routes remained vulnerable, and the Mughal army was deep inside foreign territory, surrounded by enemies on nearly every side. Worse still, Babur's own soldiers were exhausted. Many had followed him for years across mountains, deserts, and endless wars. India felt unfamiliar and hostile to them. The heat was unbearable. Food shortages became common. Disease spread through parts of the camp. Some officers quietly urged Babur to take the treasures of Delhi and return to Kabul before disaster struck. Then came the reports from the west. Rana Sanga was mobilizing. At first, Babur may not have fully understood the threat, but as more intelligence arrived, the reality became impossible to ignore. This was not another divided sultan. Rana Sanga had united Rajput kingdoms that had spent generations fighting one another, and now they shared a single goal: destroy the Mughals before their empire could survive its infancy. For the first time since Panipat, Babur began preparing for a battle he was not certain he could win. Rana Sanga was unlike any enemy Babur had faced in India. He was not remembered merely as a king. He was remembered as a warrior. Across Rajputana, stories of his battles had already become legendary. Chroniclers claimed he carried the scars of countless wars across his body. He had lost an eye, lost an arm, and survived wounds that would have killed most men. Yet every injury only increased his reputation. To many Rajputs, Rana Sanga represented resistance itself. Under his leadership, Rajput power expanded rapidly across northern India. Kingdoms that once fought each other now rallied beneath his banners. Even Afghan factions hostile to Babur joined the alliance. The scale of the confederacy was terrifying. Some estimates claimed over 80,000 warriors marched with Rana Sanga. Thousands of elite cavalry formed the core of the army. These were not inexperienced levies. Rajput cavalry had brutal reputations in close combat. Many warriors entered battle believing death itself was an honor. Unlike Ibrahim Lodi at Panipat, Rana Sanga inspired loyalty. And unlike the Sultan of Delhi, he understood warfare personally. Babur was no longer facing a decaying empire. He was facing a united military coalition led by a man who genuinely believed he could destroy the Mughals forever. As the Rajput army moved closer, fear spread through the Mughal camp like a disease. Veterans who had survived Panipat now whispered openly about defeat. Some soldiers believed the Rajput confederacy was simply too large to stop. Others feared Rana Sanga's reputation more than the army itself. Rumors exaggerated everything. Stories claimed Rajput warriors fought without fear, that they preferred death over retreat, that entire cavalry units would charge directly into cannon fire without breaking. Then morale suffered another devastating blow. Astrologers accompanying the army studied the skies and predicted disaster. Word spread quickly across the camp. The omens were unfavorable. The stars promised defeat. Superstition mixed with exhaustion and uncertainty. Some officers began questioning the invasion entirely. Why remain in India? Why risk destruction so far from home? Babur understood exactly how dangerous this moment was. Armies rarely collapse from swords alone. Most collapse first in the mind. If fear consumed his soldiers before the battle even began, Khanwa would become the graveyard of the Mughal Empire. And for perhaps the first time in years, Babur himself appeared deeply uncertain about the future. Babur knew strategy alone would not save him. Before defeating Rana Sanga, he first had to rebuild the spirit of his own army, so he staged a moment his soldiers would never forget. Babur gathered his commanders and troops before the entire camp. Then, he renounced wine forever. Golden drinking cups were shattered into the dirt. Wine stores were destroyed publicly. Babur declared that the coming battle would decide not only their survival, but their destiny. The symbolism was powerful. This was no longer a campaign for wealth, no longer a temporary invasion. Babur was declaring his intention to stay in India permanently. Slowly, morale began returning. But Babur still faced a terrifying military problem. Rana Sanga's army excelled in aggressive close combat. If the Rajputs broke into open melee fighting, Mughal lines could collapse under sheer pressure. So Babur refined the tactics that had worked at Panipat. Defensive wagon lines were chained together across sections of the battlefield. Cannons and matchlock gunners were positioned behind fortified gaps. Fast-moving cavalry units waited on the flanks for the perfect moment to strike. Babur was constructing a battlefield designed to absorb violence, then return it with devastating precision. But deep down, even he knew the Rajputs would not break as easily as Ibrahim Lodi's army had. On the morning of March 16th, 1527, the plains near Khanwa awakened beneath clouds of dust and smoke. Long before the armies could clearly see one another, they could hear each other. War drums echoed across the open land. Horses screamed in the distance. Metal armor rattled beneath marching formations. Then the Rajput army appeared. Wave after wave of cavalry emerged through the dust beneath banners of countless allied kingdoms. The sheer scale of the confederacy was overwhelming. Unlike Ibrahim Lodi's army at Panipat, these men advanced with confidence. Many believed victory was inevitable. To the Rajputs, Babur was still an outsider, a foreign invader deep inside hostile territory. Destroying him here could erase Mughal rule before it truly began. Babur watched carefully from behind his fortified lines. Cannons stood ready. Matchlock men waited silently behind defensive gaps. Cavalry remained hidden along the flanks. Every part of the battlefield had been prepared in advance. But preparation and reality were very different things, because somewhere beyond the smoke, Rana Sanga was preparing one of the largest cavalry assaults Babur had ever seen. Then, the Rajput attack began. Thousands of cavalry surged forward across the plains with terrifying speed. The ground itself seemed to shake beneath the charge. Rajput warriors crashed toward the Mughal defenses beneath a storm of banners, war cries, and flying dust. Babur waited until the enemy closed the distance. Then the cannons fired. Explosions tore across the battlefield. Smoke swallowed entire sections of the front lines. But unlike the army at Panipat, the Rajputs did not retreat. Again and again they charged directly toward the Mughal positions. Cannon fire ripped gaps into advancing formations. Yet more cavalry continued pouring forward. Soon brutal close combat erupted around Babur's wagon defenses. Rajput warriors fought fiercely at the barricades. Some broke through sections of the Mughal line entirely. Matchlock gunners were forced into desperate hand-to-hand combat. The battlefield descended into chaos. Dust darkened the sky. Horses collided in confusion. Wounded men disappeared beneath the crush of cavalry. For a moment, Babur's center began to bend under the pressure. Mughal officers struggled to maintain formation. Some units started falling backward, and across the battlefield, Rana Sanga's strategy appeared to be working. If the Rajputs could fully break the Mughal center, the entire Mughal army might collapse in a single devastating assault. Then Babur launched the second phase of his plan. Hidden Mughal cavalry suddenly swept around both flanks of the battlefield. Fast-moving horse archers attacked from the sides, firing continuously before disappearing back into the dust. The Rajput advance slowly began losing coordination. Units pushing deep into the Mughal center became separated from supporting forces behind them. Cannon fire continued hammering the battlefield from the front, while mounted archers attacked exposed sides relentlessly. Slowly, the momentum of the Rajput assault began to fade. Smoke and dust made communication nearly impossible. Orders stopped reaching commanders. Cavalry formations drifted apart. Entire sections of the battlefield fought blindly without understanding what was happening elsewhere. Babur's army was still under enormous pressure. But now the Rajputs were fighting inside a battlefield designed to exhaust and isolate them. And in the middle of the chaos, disaster suddenly struck the Rajput confederacy. During the fighting, Rana Sanga was severely wounded. Historical accounts differ on exactly how it happened. Some described an arrow strike. Others claimed he was injured during intense close combat near the front lines. But one detail appears in nearly every version of the story. Rana Sanga disappeared from the battlefield, and the moment he vanished, the morale of the Rajput confederacy began collapsing. Warriors who had fought with terrifying determination moments earlier suddenly lost coordination. Confusion spread rapidly through the army. Rumors of the Rana's death raced across the battlefield. Mughal commanders recognized the weakness immediately. Babur ordered aggressive counterattacks across multiple sections of the field. Cavalry surged forward. Horse archers pressed retreating formations relentlessly. The Rajput confederacy finally began breaking apart. What started as an organized assault slowly transformed into retreat. Then retreat became collapse. By the end of the battle, Babur had survived the greatest threat to his rule in India. Panipat had given him a throne. Khanwa ensured he would keep it. The victory shattered the largest military coalition assembled against the Mughals during Babur's reign. More importantly, it proved that Panipat had not been luck. Babur's combination of artillery, mobility, battlefield engineering, and disciplined cavalry had defeated another massive Indian army. After Khanwa, Mughal authority in northern India became far more secure. The dream of expelling Babur from Hindustan began fading rapidly. Yet the battle also changed India forever. Traditional methods of warfare were no longer enough. Gunpowder, artillery, and mobile battlefield tactics were reshaping power across the subcontinent. Thousands lay dead across the plains near Khanwa, and somewhere beyond the battlefield, the wounded Rana Sanga still dreamed of one final chance to destroy the empire that had survived against impossible odds. Babur had defeated the most dangerous enemy he would ever face in India. But the Mughal Empire was still fragile. Soon, rebellions, betrayals, and new rivals would threaten everything once again. Subscribe to Crescent and Steel, and march through history with us.